Jayo Diryat Nashta Prayasho Badreshu Nitya Bhagavata Sevya Bhagati Tamashoki Bhaktir Bhavati Naistiki Nima Digama Kapataru Garitam Param Shukamukara Mita Dravisamitam Pivata Bhagatam Rasha Mariam Mahora Horasika Bhuvi Bokaham Krishna Swadama Bhagate Damagini Hikara Karona Stadvishamasha Parana Kodunodita Twamapi Adabhishuta Vishutam Vibhu Samapi Anabidam Biksaram Prakyahituhur Maharinam Sanklesha Nirvanamasati Nanyataham Admaramastamuna Nagranti Api Horukambe Kormanti Hita Bhuta Gana Hari Om Maganati Mirandasya Garangana Salakaya Chaksuru Miritam Yanatashmai Sri Guravedama Sri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yada Bhutare Shayam Rupa Karamayam Darati Swaparantikam Vandeham Sri Guru Sita Parakamaram Sri Gunun Vaishnavam Sa Sirupam Sagaritam Sahaganada Ganatam Vitam Stam Sadevam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Paran Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitam Stam Namaham Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pastaya Bhutade Shrimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Namaste Saraswati Deva Gadavani Pacharine Near Vishesa Sunvari Praskata Desatarine Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Sri Vasari Gaur Bhakta Vindam Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare. Good morning, Transcendental Tuesday. I thought I would just do something. I'm not sure this is going to work. I'm going to need you to give me your thumbs up if you can hear this, but I thought it might be fun to play this song, the lyrics of which Vallaba Chandra penned a few months ago about book distribution. I know that Shali was talking about reserving a booth on May 24th at the Scandinavian Festival down there in Ephraim, and Vallaba Chandra's going to be in Ogden doing a book table where we have a Festival of Colors on the same day, but they're going to talk. And anyway, book distribution is in the air. So here is a song written by Vallaba Chandra, and this is in a kind of a, let's see, folk rock, country rock song. So let me know if you can hear it. I'm going to play it now. All around me is frail and confusion, hypocrisy and delusion. Can you hear it? Everyone wants to cheat. Okay, it looks like you can. To eat meat. Love's in the back. This courtesy of Vallaba Chandra. Does anyone know the way? Do I just pray? Ain't there someone I can just pay to take the pain away? But hey, black or white, day or night, guess I'll just stay away from the whole gray day, since it's all so gray anyway. I see some dude selling books, some sort of fanatic by his looks. Seems happy though. I'll give it a go. Information about God says they're written by a gent sent from the Orient. He took a ride on a boat to devote his life to Krishna. Check it out, free yourself from doubt. I give the guy a donation or a publication and leave him at his station to find a place to read the narration. It says I'm an eternal spirit soul. I can realize this by chanting Hare Krishna and hear the vibration. Take a vacation from mundane prostration. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna. Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. I look at the book cover to see who I'm reading.
I see a man in a robe with eyes that probe. He sits humbly on the ground, contemplating something profound. His followers were initially sense swallowers before hearing the transcendental vibration from the Swami meditation. He turned hippies into happy. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna. Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. He'd wake up at night to write, or catching his next flight, so that people like me might take sight of the torchlight of knowledge. I'm not gonna lie, I'm big in the sky, but he's got some principles that are kinda hard to find. I know I'm trying. So can to send me back home. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna. Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama. Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna. Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama. Hare.
Well, oh, wait a minute. Okay, hopefully let me okay. Okay. Yeah, from the hearts and the thumbs up and everything, seems like y'all enjoyed it. And explicitly, Britta, she says, I love it, with all kinds of hearts and pranams and symbols. And I think Kelly was putting up a lot of hearts and things. So you got some fans, Vallaba Chandra, Lila also. I think it's great. And I think that hillbilly, rockabilly is a, there's about four different versions of it, different categories of music, but the rockabilly is the one that tickles me the most. It's a good job. If you were listening yesterday, you know that we're really in the mood of creating songs right now, revamping the entire radio station with some software. All you do is type in the text and you choose the genre and the voice, and you voila. I've made almost 200 songs in the last 3 days and populated the playlist of the KH Command radio station with them. If you're out of state like Kelly or Ram Kishore, you can download an app. The one we use is Simple Radio. There are any number of others. They cost maybe $3 for a lifetime, and just look for Krishna Radio. And I haven't nearly finished all the programming that I want to do until I get the radio station to where I want it to be. But probably within a week, by New Year's, it'll be completely transformed, have a complete makeover, a complete facelift. Um, and I think many of the Bengali songs, there's a sense of devotion that comes through. There's no question about it. But I don't know how long, one Bengali song followed by another Bengali song. There's a tendency to switch channels. But we're going to translate those Bengali songs into English and present English versions of them. So we're excited and busy. Long, long hours. I think I'm actually spending 12 to 14 hours a day converting or creating, well, co-creating with the software. Actually, I'm not creating much. I'm just hitting the right buttons and putting in the right prompts. Okay. Now, how about some philosophy on this Transcendental Tuesday morning? We talked about keeping in the fire. That's a term that people use, especially devotees, in the fire. And it's very meaningful because it means that if you don't keep in the fire, you're not going to get hot. Prabhupada used to give the example of the iron rod. The iron rod is cold by nature. If you've ever touched metal, it's usually quite cold. It conducts temperature. And so if it's early morning chill like now, you don't want to pick up a bare metal rod with your bare hands, or maybe if you're a worker, a metal worker, you don't want to be touching metal rods with your bare hands in the early morning hours. Your hand will stick to them. Skin will come off. You notice metal workers at this hour of the morning, they're always wearing gloves as a matter of practicality. But what we want to do is take our metal-like hearts, our cold our cold hearts, and melt them like butter in proximity to fire. We don't want to be like Duryodhana. Krishna went to the Kaurava palace to plead for peace. He agreed to the concession that the Pandavas, who were formerly the rulers of the kingdom that Duryodhana himself had usurped. You all know the story. Duryodhana cheated the Pandavas out of their kingdom with a crooked dice game. The Pandavas went into forest for 13 years, and when they came out, they were supposed to get half their kingdom back. And Duryodhana recanted. He broke his promise. So Krishna went. Krishna was, you've heard the term eating crow. I mean, the Pandavas were supposed to get half their kingdom back. So Krishna went to plead on their behalf, and Krishna was even willing to let the Kauravas slide if they would give the Pandavas just 5 villages. That's all the Pandavas want. They would settle for peace. They were loath to engage all their friends and relatives and cousin brothers in a fratricidal war. So they were willing to back down to the point of accepting 5 villages instead of the whole kingdom to which they were rightful heirs. And so Krishna went with a very reasonable proposal to Duryodhana's palace that Pandavas would be willing to accept only 5 villages, but they have to have something to rule. So 5 villages is just a token. Basically, the Pandavas give up everything. They're willing to cede everything to Duryodhana. And yet Duryodhana was intractable. He said, I will not give them as much land as can fit under the head of a pin. So Krishna had spoken so many nice words. It said that when Krishna spoke in the assembly hall of the Kurus, it was like the pleasing rumble of thunder before a spring rain. Everybody was enamored with the talk of Krishna. Krishna could have gone on talking. They would be just like, more, 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 more. Krishna's talking is just as beautiful as his physical form, as his form. Anything about Krishna is all attractive. Not that one part of Krishna is more attractive than another part. Every single millimeter, square millimeter of his body is attractive, whether it be your sense of touch, your sense of sight, or your hearing. However you intersect with Krishna, it's going to be absorbing. It's going to pull you in. Now, everybody's sitting there listening to Krishna. And not only is Krishna being more than reasonable on behalf of the Pandavas, but his words are so well chosen. It's so nicely spoken, and there's so much love and affection when Krishna communicates. Now, everybody was, they were eating out of the palm of Krishna's hand, which is our eternal constitutional position. We should be doing that, except for Duryodhana and his cohorts. And the reason they weren't feeling the same way as the majority of the crowd is because they had iron-like hearts. They had iron-like hearts. They were pious, they were devoted, but being devoted is like only getting so far, so close to the fire. You don't want to get too close to the fire. You don't want to get so close to the fire that you get more than normally heated up. People like Duryodhana, they want to keep their material interests going, and they'll take the fire at a distance for some warmth. but they won't get into the fire, because when you get into the fire of devotional service, when you spend serious time and serious energy to understand the divyam karma, the transcendental nature behind Krishna's appearance and activities, and you make a serious effort to clean up your diet, eliminate cruelty foods, and you make a serious effort to choose the people of your inner circle to include devotees. Those are things that people like Duryodhana, they don't want to do that. They don't have time because they're full out, they're full on for material goods and acquisitions. They may make a show of piety, or they may engage in even some of the principles, some of the activities of devotional service, but because they don't do it, they don't prioritize it, they prioritize material sense gratification, they can't apply themselves to devotional service in such a way as to get the desired effect, in such a way as to get the potency. Even an iron rod, probably used to say that if you put it into the fire long enough, and it has to be in the fire uninterrupted. I'm just going to turn the heater off here. It's making some noise. There we go. If you put the iron rod in the fire for a little while and then pull it out, then it'll cool. And you put it in the fire, and as it's heating up, but it's not heating up to the point where it acts like fire, and you pull it out. You could go on doing that forever, and the iron rod will basically stay cool. What you have to do is you have to put the iron rod in the fire and leave it there. Then something extraordinary happens. When the iron rod is left in the fire for a sufficient period of time, it gets red hot. That which has as its essential nature coolness, nature changes due to its association with the fire. The fire takes over. And that iron rod becomes so red hot that you can then take it and light paper, wood, and other things like that. So when you just pay lip service, or in a fleeting way, um, wave to devotees from a distance, or visit the temple for 5 minutes to show everybody how pious you are, or even to give a donation or quote scripture. Duryodhana and Jarasandha, all the opponents of Krishna 5,000 years ago, it's not that they didn't do some bhakti or didn't do religious righteous activities. They gave in charity. They knew scriptures. The whole society itself was far more righteous and law-abiding in those days than it is now. Many of those whom Krishna killed would be considered good religionists, good leaders, good civic servants nowadays. But the problem is, it wasn't their priority. It was more or less a pretense. There was the hypocrisy of presenting yourself one way and your heart thrilling to other stimuli. Prabhupada said, if you want to know where someone's heart is, look at their checkbook. Your money is going to go where your heart is. So when Krishna spoke to Duryodhana, and Krishna suggested that Duryodhana make a small concession, it would have meant nothing for Duryodhana, who had usurped the kingdom of the whole world. It wouldn't have been any sacrifice at all for him to give him the Pandavas 5 village. And yet his priorities were so skewered, so topsy-turvy, that he sealed his fate by impertinently saying to Krishna, I will not give the Pandavas as much land as you can fit under a pin. At that point, Krishna said, because the words of Krishna and the reasonable suggestions, proposals of Krishna had not found a place in Duryodhana's heart. He was adamant. From the river to the sea, I will not cohabit the planet with the Pandavas, my enemies. It's either them or us. It says in the Bhagavatam, excuse me, that even if there's only two people in the universe, if they both have unlimited desires for sense gratification, eventually there'll be the showdown at high noon. One or the other will vie to be prominent because the desires expand unlimitedly. There's no end to the desires, to the point the statement is made that even were there only two living beings in the universe, because both of their desires would be expanding unlimitedly, eventually they would clash. It's not like they would be able to live peacefully in different parts of the universe. Eventually, their expansionistic ambitions would clash. There would be a confrontation. So how we immunize ourselves from this mentality creeping in, because after all, we wouldn't be here in the first place if we didn't want material sense gratification. The proof is we got these material bodies. These material bodies that we have are an instrument that's given to us through the agents of material nature in order to fulfill material desires. The whole process of going back to the spiritual world is changing the quality of your desires, just like changing the iron from being cold to being red hot. Um, right now, our desires are to enjoy our senses in this material world, to surround ourselves with people who honor us and say our name, defer to us. Spiritual success doesn't come about by ignoring your desires or repressing your desire. It's just a matter of purifying the desires. So we then desire to serve Krishna. And when you use your senses to serve Krishna, then you're going to get a spiritual body. The spiritual body is an instrument for the soul that wants to serve Krishna. And the material body is an instrument for the soul that wants to enjoy one's senses in this material world. Everything is hinging on the quality of our desires. We chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. This is an incredibly sophisticated and yet uh, easy process to change the quality of your desires. Think about it. Your tongue is engaged, your ear is engaged. You can look at a picture of Krishna. I'm looking at a picture of Krishna right now, a Rajasthani picture on the wall. You can smell the incense and flowers. You can use your tactile sense to chant on beads or play the harmonium. What happens is you're engaging your six senses just by this simple practice. You're engaging your six senses, that's the five senses including the mind, in associating with Krishna through sound vibration. Now you can't associate with Krishna, as I just said. You can't associate with Krishna either with the ears or the eyes or the touch or the taste without being captured, without being swept towards Krishna, because he's all attractive. But we have to practice regularly. We have to keep in the fire. Radha Govinda Maharaj, he once said the devotees should always keep their bead bags with them. There's a loop around the bead bag. And he said the loop is not to hang your bead bag on a nail in the wall and then walk away. Devotees have their bead bags with them wherever they go, because the beads will be right at hand. Whenever you have a delay, you're waiting for something. Right now, I'm putting all this lyrics and prompts into the software program, and so it's creating music and choosing vocals. So there's 2 or 3 minutes from the time I say create until the time that the creation actually is there for my listening and approval. So you chant. It's a perfect time to chant. You may not be able to chant a whole round, but you can just chant. Prabhupada said, you know, if you can chant uninterruptedly, then sit down and chant 16 rounds without any interruption. But that's a minimum. Otherwise, anytime there's some break in our routine, we can take up our beads and chant a few rounds. This is all geared towards, at the time of death, hopefully we will have evolved our spiritual senses, even within this material body, So the time of leaving the body at the time of death, that's the critical time. That will reveal how diligent we've been and how consistent we've been in keeping in the fire. If you go in and out, in and out, in and out, one will not be able to maintain the steady concentration of Krishna at the time of death. Death is very painful. Death is an assault like no other assault. We know that death is more miserable, it's a more severe level of suffering than we will have ever felt in this lifetime. And the reason we know that is because we're going to leave the body. Death means the soul can no longer stay within this material body. Just like if you're living in an apartment house and someone comes along with a crane and a wrecking ball, and all of a sudden a wrecking ball comes through your window. You have to exit that apartment house. You are not going to exit the apartment house if the fire escapes are not maintained. You're not going to exit the apartment house if there's graffiti on the walls. You're not going to exit the apartment house if your neighbors are cooking bad smells. Uh, but you are going to exit the apartment house when the wrecking ball comes through the window. So we've all experienced pain of various levels: physical pain, psychic pain, emotional pain. But we have not experienced to this point in time the level of pain that's going to approach us at the time of death, and that's going to be of um, such a severe nature that we're going to leave the body. We can no longer maintain this body, and so to preserve Krishna consciousness at that moment is the trick. That's the trick. That's the critical time. The example is given that a soldier, he may only fight briefly. Kurukshetra war was quite a sustained conflict. It was 18 days. This isn't drones. This isn't like long-haired techies, pushing, doing Xbox and dropping bombs halfway across the world. This is mano a mano. Everybody had swords. Everybody had arrows and javelins and shields. So they literally were clashing body against body. Uh, if you wanted to kill your opponent, you had to be very strong. You had to be very adept, and you had to be extremely courageous. It wasn't a coward's war where you hide and drop bombs on that distant enemy, or go behind a tree and snipe at them from half a mile away. This was intimate. This was, as they say, up close and personal. Well, those soldiers who fought for 18 days in the Kurukshetra war, they were in their 30s, I think. Probably Arjuna was 30. Krishna was his elder cousin, and Krishna was in the 90th year of his pastime. So I don't think Arjuna was that much younger than Krishna. So, of course, they lived longer. That was at the cusp of the Dwarka age, where people lived for 1,000 years, and it was coming into the Kali Yuga age. So, um, Krishna stayed on the planet for 125 years. The Bhagavad Gita took place during the 90th year of his manifested pastime. So I think Arjuna must have been at least in his 50s. Of course, that was a much younger 50 in those days than what it means to be 50 nowadays. So um, imagine it's an 18 days war, a little bit more than 2 weeks. Imagine the years, the decades of training each and every one of those warriors had to have undergone in order to hold their own on that battlefield. In that culture, from the age of 5, psychologists, seniors, elders, they would study each and every child and determine their aptitude, determine their temperaments, try to anticipate in what area they would shine in their future lives. There's the intellectual, there's the warrior, there's the commercial, banking and trading and business, and then there's the workers, artisans and craftsmen. the senior members of society would try to identify as early as at the age of 5 where each and every one of those youngsters would shine. If one of them was physically stout and showed leadership qualities and was very athletic and coordinated and particularly generous, someone to whom the other kids would look up to, then from the age of 5, they would go every day to a military guru like Bhismadev or Dronacharya, some such, and they would train. They would learn to go out and survive in all kinds of wilderness situations, sleep on the ground, endure excessive heat and excessive cold. They would learn how to fast. They would learn how to fight in situations where you wouldn't get food or even water for sustained periods of time. These guys were tough. They were tough. There were decades and decades of training behind each and every one of those soldiers. But think about it. A soldier only fights once every few years. Doesn't fight every day. Years might go by. And he doesn't fight at all. But every day he trains. Every day he's training so that when that critical time comes, he won't fall short. He'll be able to defend himself properly so he doesn't lose his life. And he'll be able to be aggressive enough that he can make a contribution from his side towards defeating and reducing the enemies. Even in the modern age, when it's more or less conducted in a cowardly way, people kill their enemies from a distance by using guns. How much time is spent on the target range? How much time during basic training? How many rounds? How many shells does a trainee shoot in training? He might only shoot, you know, of, compared to the number of rounds he shoots in training, the number of rounds he shoots in combat might only be 1/1000th of the number of rounds. But if you don't put in the training, if you don't train long hours and shoot many, many rounds, then your shooting is not going to be effective when it really counts. When you have to shoot accurately to eliminate the enemy who may be shooting more accurately, trying to eliminate you. Krishna says the final test is death. You can't have a wishy-washy, lukewarm attitude. If you're going to conquer death, you have to let that final unalterable fact be with you all the time. As sure as taxes and death. Don't live in denial. It's not morbid to say that we're going to die. That's not morbid. It's not going around in a state of morbidity. It's just a fact. That's what's going to happen. There's no one who's ever been exempt in the history of the world. So Gajendra is saying that we have to not lose sight of that fact. All the sense gratification of the world is not going to protect you when cruel death comes and taps you on the shoulder. But Krishna is referred to by Gajendra here as Kaivalya Nata in this 11th verse of the 3rd chapter of the 8th canto of the Bhagavatam. Kaivalya Nata means he's the Lord of liberation. Kaivalya in one sense means exclusive. It means something exclusive. So Kaivalya Nata means Krishna is the only, Prabhupada called him the transcendental autocrat. Spiritual world, I wouldn't call it a monarchy because Krishna doesn't reign as a king with power. He reigns with his flute and out of love. But there is one supreme living being in the spiritual world to whom everyone is attracted. When Krishna entered the wrestling arena to contend with Mustika and Chanura, the wrestlers of Kamsa, his presence captured, completely absorbed everyone's attention. Different people saw Krishna in different ways, but one thing was indisputable, that everybody's eyes were riveted on Krishna. However they saw him, whether it was as a friend or as a boy, or as a supreme personality of Godhead, or as cruel death, or as their enemy, everybody's attention was focused exclusively on Krishna. So Krishna is Kaivalya Nata. He's the transcendental autocrat in the spiritual world. Nobody does anything without thinking of Krishna at each and every single moment. Kaivalya means also when we want to advance in spiritual life, we are also given this Harinama, Harinama, Harinami, Kevalam, Kalo, Nisteva, 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 Gatiranya. Kevalam. Kevalam means, in this age particularly, the only way. There are other bona fide paths which were effective in previous ages, but in this fallen age of quarrel and hypocrisy in which we live, Kali Yuga, where we only live for 100 years or so, where the society is completely materialistic. People haven't got a clue, nor they even want to know anything about spiritual life. The exclusive process which will yield success is the chanting of the holy names. Harinama, 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 3 times positively asserting. Harinama, Harinama, having a kalovna steva in this Kali Yuga age. Although there are other bona fide processes like deity worship, like meditation, and temple worship, only the chanting of Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram. That's the only process that's going to yield perfection in this particular age. That's it. Nama Chintamani Krishna Chaitanya Rasa Vidya Purna Sitya Nitya Mukta. The name springs, comes down to us from the eternal liberated platform. The name is pure. The name is perfect. The name comes not out of any mundane, it doesn't describe any mundane phenomenon. Rather, it is God himself appearing before us through sound vibration. That has the power, Tivrena Bhakti Yoga, to purge us of all darkness, of all misgivings, to get us on the right path back to home, back to Godhead. Not giving up eating, not giving up friendship, not giving up having children, not giving up recreation, but doing everything through Krishna, taking Krishna prasadam, raising your family to be Krishna conscious children, taking as your friends people who are also Krishna conscious. When one does this, even though one is in the material world, in one sense, in another sense, everything that you've surrounded yourself with, everything that makes up the components of your day-to-day life is eternal. The name is eternal, prasadam's eternal, association's eternal, the Bhagavad Gita is eternal sound vibration. The process of deity worship is eternally done in the spiritual world. So one transforms literally matter into spirit by chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Hare Hare. Otherwise, in this material world, there's one word to describe everything that happens in this material world. One word. Well, matter is one word as opposed to spirit. But the nature of matter is that it's changing. Everything changes in this material world. From birth to growth to duration, reproduction, dwindling and vanishing, everything without exception. Everything in this physical phenomenal world goes through these 6 phases. Birth, growth, duration, reproduction, dwindling, and vanishing. In this material world, everything has a date of birth. It has a date in which one reaches the apogee, the height of one's powers, after which it's a long downhill slide, and one comes full circle to the same weakness and incontinence in old age that one had as a child. Essentially, everything in this material world is lifeless. Everything is dead. Everything is dark. Everything is inanimate. Everything has an expiration date. Nothing is permanent, except for us. So we have an innate attraction to things that are animate. That's why we associate in social circles, because within each and every body of our friends is a soul, and that's what is attractive to us. Once the soul leaves the body, we're not going to go to a party with their bodies. There's an attraction to an animate world where everything moves. I heard, I've never seen one, that the Harry Potter movies are so popular because trees are animate. Someone will talk to the protagonist out of a picture. This is one of the reasons why this series and the movies that are made from the book have become so wildly popular, because we have a natural desire to live in a world in which there is no matter. This world is, everything's covered by matter. Everything that we see, touch, taste, and smell, although our senses are originally spiritual, they're covered. So we're 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 almost sleepwalking. Imagine if you were forced to go around with 10 blankets on you. Your running would be impeded, your jumping would be impeded, your sports would be impeded, even picking up food to eat it would impede you, your digestion would be impeded. Nobody in their right mind would willingly go through life carrying 10 blankets draped over them. At your first opportunity, you throw out the blankets and run faster, eat better, jump higher. But that's our situation. We're surrounded, we're covered with dead, dull, temporary, coming and going matter. We ourselves, we're consciousness, we're life. And we come from that spiritual world where there is no matter, where there is no change. That means there's no loss. The loves we have are permanent. Time doesn't exist in future, present, past. Time exists only in one eternal dimension. Some of the descriptions, if we recall them, of how it is that everything's animate in the spiritual world, it is said that in order to precipitate Damodar Lila, Mother Yashoda is taking care of Krishna. But the arrangement is that Mother Yashoda would abandon Krishna, and Krishna would get upset. He would feed the milk to the monkeys, then his mother would chase him, so on and so forth. Then she'd tie him to the mortar, and then he'd break down the two Arjuna trees from which would come the celestial beings, Manigriva and Nalakaliva. All this had to be set in motion by milk boiling and spilling over the pot. Only when the milk would boil and spill over the pot would Mother Yashoda put Krishna aside. She's actually milking him, and she puts him aside to go to attend to her household duties, and that Krishna gets upset. And then one thing leads to another. So the milk had its job. The milk was conscious, and the milk jumped out of it. It wasn't a case where reaching a certain degrees Fahrenheit, the chemical changes took place in the milk, and therefore, due to the laws of physics, there are no laws of physics, there are no laws of chemistry in the spiritual world. The only law is that this is a pastime that Krishna wants to perform. So the milk has to jump out of the pot and spill over the stove. The milk does its job. The milk is conscious. It's throwing itself into the fire so that Mother Yashoda will get distracted, and one thing will lead to another. And then thousands of years ago, for an entire month, we'll sing the Damodar prayers each and every evening during Kartik. If you recall also, when Krishna plays his flute, while out in the pasturing grounds, the waters of the river Yamuna, which have already gone past him, upon catching the sound of his flute, they stop, and the waters back up. And the water, which normally be flowing, it's usually a great weight of water behind pushing the water ahead, but the water would remain motionless, listening. The water would be listening to the sound of Krishna's flute. The grass is aspiring to cushion Krishna's footstep. The grass doesn't want to think of Krishna lotus feet getting pierced by thorns and sharp little rat. rocks. So wherever Krishna goes, the grass is not limited by roots. Grass is not confined to one spot in in time and space. The grass will go and it will present itself underneath Krishna's footfall, to cushion Krishna's feet. Uddhava, Krishna's best friend, his constant companion in Dwarka during his manifest earthly pastimes, Uddhava, after Krishna sent him to study the devotion of the gopis in Vrindavan, Uddhava was so amazed at the unconditional love that the gopis had for Krishna that then he wanted to be a root or a creeper in Vrindavan so he could be close to the gopis and render some service to them in some form or capacity others. Uddhava, the greatest devotee of Krishna, aspired to be a blade of grass or a bush or a creeper. Obviously, that means that those are not inanimate. They're not inanimate. It's explained that in Vrindavan, there are thousands and thousands of disciples and thousands of gurus. The blades of grass are all following the examples. The flowing, the swaying trees are following examples. The trees themselves, the cows, the manjaris, everybody has another for who is responsible for bringing them into the spiritual world, is responsible for directing their service. Here at our property in Spanish Fort, we have volunteers coming and going from all over the world, um, Europe, Asia, South America, Africa. They don't know what to do. Every morning, Bhai Bobby sits them down. Bhai Bobby has been here for 40 years. She gives them their marching orders. She tells them how they can fit in, how they can find purpose, how they can make their stay meaningful. And they wouldn't know otherwise. They would just be sitting here feeling how strange it is to be in a new place and not really knowing how to make themselves useful at all. We all want to be useful. We all want to serve some purpose. So Vaibhavi is the conduit. Vaibhavi is the mentor, the guru, so that people who come here find meaning and find purpose, find satisfaction. Similarly, no one comes to Vrindavan, no blade of grass, no creeper, no bush, no cow, no insect, no aquatic, no bird, no blade of comes to Vrindavan except they have come having been trained up, having been inspired by a previous guru. So there are thousands and thousands and thousands of disciples in Vrindavan and thousands of gurus. In fact, it's known as the land of the gurus. And the topmost guru is Krishna himself. Krishna is teaching by his behavior and by his beauty and by his wisdom. Everybody falls head over heels in love. Everybody absorbs himself 24/7 in thoughts of Krishna, in thoughts of how I can serve Krishna, in thoughts of how I can promote Nikunjayuno Ratikeli Siddha Yayali Biju Tira Pekshamiya. Everybody, according to the instructions and the insights of their previous acharyas, their gurus, their saviors, is lining up to maximize the sweetness of the conjugal affairs between Krishna and Radha and the gopis. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Gajendra, after having spent 1,000 years as in the body of an elephant and who knows how many thousands of years prior to that as Indradumna, etc., 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 is now fed up with the temporary, limited material world. He's tired of interacting with things that have expiration dates on them, including his wife, his children, his own body. And now that yearning, that hunger to go to that world where there is no change, where there is no disaster, where there is no misery or no suffering, has become foremost in his mind. I noticed in the corner of my eye that Vallaba Chandra is putting out the verse this morning. I'm not surprised. He should be fired up after our having played that song to start things out. Oh, wait a minute. No, this is Britta. Britta. Both. Both. Shali joined us. Kelly joined us. Lilavati. Vaibhavi went up to Salt Lake and left some posters for Lilavati. I hope you were able to find them. Yeah, I've done a lot of ska versions. If you can, I think you can access the radio station right through our website. There's a button there. Otherwise, just get an app for your phone. Like I said, we use Simple Radio. There, I'm just starting to populate. Maybe one song and 20 is English and ska, reggae, folk, dub. But if you give me a week or so, there'll be much more of it. Britta says, this is so exciting. I also love the traditional songs, but contemporary music makes the devotion come alive. I love MC Yogi and DJ Drez and Krishna's song. Yeah, more of that. A lot more of that. Original songs, too, with the help of AI. Here's Vallaba Chandra. Turn your metal heart to fire before you expire. Let the heat mold your cold iron heart to gold before the bell is tolled. You aren't doing life right if you never ignite. Don't hammer hedge, just warming up at the edge. Jump right into the flame by chanting the holy names. Oh, I love that. Well, maybe I'll make a song out of that with your permission. Turn your metal heart to fire before you expire. Let the heat mold your cold iron heart to gold before the bell is tolled. You aren't doing life right if you never ignite. Don't hammer hedge, just warming up at the edge. Jump right into the flame by chanting the holy name. Ragna, Haribo. I think is today Christmas Eve? Is this the 24th? Well, Merry Christmas, everybody. I have to call some of my friends in Dallas and Los Angeles and say Merry Christmas to them. People I don't see much anymore. We just talk maybe once a year. Britta says, I sure am noticing changes in my and my husband's bodies as we age. Good thing we love one another as spirit souls. Britta posted a picture from 1981, back in the old days when we only had the log building. Picture of her on one occasion when she came down with Dave and her best friend, Chrissy Kilgo. Those were the days, huh? I've always says the radio's not streaming this morning. That's bad news. Well, I better let you go then. Go down to the radio station, see why it's not broadcasting. We'll be back tomorrow for Wisdom Wednesday. Have a great Christmas Eve, and we'll see you on Christmas morning. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.